Back to Miller. Oh my goodness.
Herbert.
Sidearm sling, and it's a touchdown.
Tyrese Maxey.
Oh, good spin move by Filipowski for the news. Give him 9.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, joined alongside Joe Kmetz, coming off a long weekend up in Connecticut, where we watched Yale take down Harvard to win a share of the Ivy League in a pretty exciting game. Even though we watched the second half from the parking lot, it was still a cool experience, cool thing to be at, and it was a fun weekend, taking in some college football with everyone. So fun weekend, and we have the regular season finale. It's hard to believe we're already here. I feel like we said it every single week how fast the season goes, but it feels just like yesterday we were breaking down Notre Dame Navy and USC San Jose State, Ohio San Diego State, and now here we are, the last week of the regular season, conference title game next week. We'll be talking about the playoff rankings in this episode, but Joe, as always, welcome back. And how are we feeling that this is the final week of the regular season for college football?
I say it every year. It's very bittersweet because on the one hand, it's rivalry week. It's like, all right, we're about to get into the playoff. We're going to be, this much closer to, getting that 4-team picture, getting that national champion. And it's fantastic. It's a great time. Normally, the rivalry week is one of the best weeks of the season. But it also sucks because, like you said, it feels like it was just yesterday. We were sitting here that last weekend of August talking about football being back and all that. And now here we are about to break down, Ohio State, Michigan, and all that, all the big games this upcoming weekend. That goes by quick. It feels like at the end, but then also, there are times where I'm like, oh man, like this was so long ago, it feels like. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of just, depends how you look at it. I think tonight is actually the last night. I remember it was like 50 straight days of football back in like the beginning of October or something like that, when the Conference USA was doing the Tuesday night games. I remember we were talking about. So we're finally coming to the end, and you always know it's the end, towards the end of the regular season when you're getting the tweet alerts and the social media from the Army Navy uniform reveals. We were talking about Army Navy in a few weeks, most likely during a college basketball preview show, which is going to be crazy that we're already really, into college basketball season. Watching, UConn, Texas, the Maui Invitational going on right now. But, yeah, it's like I kind of always say, it's very bittersweet.
All right, so before we get into the games for this week, for rivalry week, we're recording this shortly right after the new top 25 came out for the college football playoff rankings. Had a bit of changes. You had Washington replacing Florida State in that 4-5 spot. Georgia's number 1, Ohio State number 2, Michigan number 3. As you know, Ohio State and Michigan playing each other this weekend. Then you had Washington at 4, Florida State at 5, Oregon at 6, Texas at 7, Alabama at 8. That's who I think are the final 8 teams that have a shot at making it. But I think you're still in the camp that number 10 Louisville can make it, and you have number 9 Mizzou. So those are that's the top 10, I guess. Joe, anything that you want to kind of touch on, and just at first too, give me your thoughts on the whole Jordan Travis situation and how you think that's going to ultimately impact Florida State.
Yeah, I mean, that just really sucks with Jordan Travis. I think they, the fan base, the players, the team, don't worry about it right now. I know it's crazy. You got to win out first, because the one thing they were talking about, Coyle, right? I was looking at it quick. That's why I took a couple minutes after the rankings ended. They were actually comparing the resumes of Washington, Florida State. Washington's resume is actually better in the major categories, which is what it is. But Florida State and Michigan, their resumes are basically identical. And Florida State actually has better wins. They put the wins up side by side. Michigan only has 1 win versus a team that's currently ranked in the college football playoff top 25, I believe. And that's Penn State. Florida State having Clemson go back up into the top 25 this week, sitting down there at 24, huge for them. If you beat Florida and then beat Louisville, who, as long as Louisville doesn't choke, which, by the way, I know I was in the Louisville camp. If they didn't move above Missouri this week, there's no chance they get in, even if they win the ACC, especially now because they'll knock them because Florida State won't have Jordan Travis. Excuse me. I think Florida State will be fine. If they go undefeated, I don't see – the only way I could see Florida State missing if they go undefeated is if Bama beats Georgia, and then you have the Ohio State Michigan winner, especially if Michigan were to win that game undefeated, and then Washington goes undefeated, because then you have two undefeateds at 1-2. Then it's a whole mess for those 3 and 4 spots with the SEC champion. Then, you're also, I completely forget, Texas. That's the one thing about this season. I feel like normally there isn't 8. I know, considering Louisville out, but there's 9 teams from Power 5 conferences that have 1 loss or less going into this week. It's very crazy. Normally the numbers are a bit thinner. Normally we're talking about like 4, 5, 6, not 4 through 8. This would be a great year for a 12-team playoff. Next year it's going to be fantastic. You have Penn State, you'd have the potential Heisman winner in Daniels at LSU sitting at 14, having a shot to sneak into that last spot. You have a team like Arizona, who we're going to talk, I'm going to bring up briefly, but if Oregon loses to Oregon State and Arizona wins, it's Arizona going to the Pac-12 title game, not Oregon. There's just a lot of things, like the 12-team playoff is going to be great. But ultimately, you look at the top 10, Georgia, Bama, once again, they're going to play each other. That's going to work itself out. Ohio State, Michigan, obviously, we're going to talk about in a little bit. They play this week. Washington, going to have to play, most likely, Oregon. I think Oregon's going to win this week, spoiler alert. They're going to play each other again. That'll settle itself out. Florida State, Louisville play. That'll settle itself. The only team really that is kind of up in the air about their future is Texas. They could potentially, they're probably hoping Oklahoma gets back in to the Big 12 title game so they can avenge that loss to them earlier in the season. I don't think they want Oklahoma State to get in or can't. I would be actually very nervous if I was a Texas fan and you had to see K-State for the second time, because we know what happened to TCU last year in the Big 12 title game. Texas, same thing. They got to beat Texas Tech this week. None of these teams can slip up, and it's very weird, Coyle. It feels like, kind of like I was alluding to earlier, we've always had 1 week where chaos has happened. It feels like we haven't really had that this year. As much as early on in the year we were talking about how this season had a lot of that potential, it feels like the top teams have really held serve. The top 10 have really separated themselves from the rest of college football. And while you do have quality teams in the top 25, it really just seems like the top 10 are holding steady. It's just going to be very interesting going into this weekend, seeing just how it all unfolds.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be the winner of the Bama-Georgia game gets in. I think the loser, if the loser's Alabama, obviously out. Georgia, I just don't think – I think they're one of those teams that doesn't really have many quality wins to their name either. I know they had to go through the SEC, but – not that many big-time wins this year in the SEC, as we saw. They didn't have to play LSU. Tennessee's down. Ole Miss was probably their best win, I think, on the schedule this year. So I think they're going to have a hard time getting in, maybe as a potential 4th team, depending on some other things. But I think it'll be that Alabama-Georgia winner is one of the teams. The Ohio State-Michigan winner, assuming that they go on to beat Iowa in the title game. So there's 2 teams. I think the Washington, as long as it's Washington versus Oregon, I think the winner of that game goes. And then I think as long as Texas wins, I think they're going to go. And I think that is why it's plausible for Florida State to get left out, because what the committee will try and use against them, obviously, is you don't have your quarterback anymore. But my thing with Florida State, we'll get into that a little bit more when we're talking about the matchup. But I think the Florida State team, they win with Jordan Travis, obviously. He's a big part of being the quarterback and a very good quarterback at that. But he's not like a Caleb Williams where if Jordan Travis doesn't go out there and have 450 yards and 5 touchdowns, Florida State isn't winning the game. Like, that is a good all-around football team, and they win with him in there in the system, but he is not the ultimate driving force for that team. They have 2 NFL receivers. They have an NFL running back. They got dudes on the offensive and defensive line. But I just think at the end of the day, it's going to get used against them that their quarterback's not in there. They want, the biggest brands possible. You have a Pacific Northwest team in either Oregon or Washington. You have Texas, where finally getting back, making the playoff. You have obviously one of the big dogs in the SEC, and then you have one of the big teams in the Big Ten. It just gives them an easy route to go and say, oh, your quarterback's done. We're not putting you in the playoff and risking that. if they go and absolutely dismantle Florida this week, good for them. And then if they go and absolutely dismantle Louisville, though, I think that's a better argument for them to potentially go. They're rooting big time for Louisville this week to beat Kentucky. But I think Florida State's going to have a tough time getting in. And I think this week with falling out, as kind of the committee is alluding to that a little bit, I do see a potential path where Texas could get left out, but I think that would only be if Georgia does beat Alabama, because as we've seen with the rankings, they haven't put Alabama above Texas yet. And I think Alabama has definitely been playing better than Texas, but Texas still owns that head-to-head win on the road. So there's going to be some chaos, and there will be, as we were touching on last week, one team I think that is sour and is left out at the end of the day. But I think it'll be the SEC champ, the Big Ten champ, assuming that is either Michigan or Ohio State. Iowa goes and puts up 40 on them. That would be the funniest thing. That would be the chaos. But then you have Texas, unless Texas pulls a Texas, which I wouldn't put it past them, dropping to Texas Tech this week, or one of those teams in the Big 12 title game. And then the Pac-12 champ as well. I think that's ultimately what it's going to be at the end of the day. But so much for the hypotheticals. It's time to, I guess, get into it now. And the games coming up, the matchups, we have our final 6 games of the regular season. As we said, it's wild. We start on Friday. We have one game with our group of 5 game. It's an awesome one. And then we have a full slate Saturday, from Saturday at noon till Saturday night. So we have it covered, all the big games. Like I said, we have a game on Friday with the UTSA Tulane game, but we're going to get into the biggest one, the biggest game of the college football season this year. I think earlier in the year it was that Alabama-Texas game, but this is the game that I think everyone's been looking forward to the most the entire season. That's number 2, Ohio State, going to number 3, Michigan. Both teams 11-0 overall. Both teams 8-0 in the conference. The 12 o'clock kickoff on Fox. Michigan, a 3.5-point favorite, over under 46.5. And I have not seen or heard one person on Ohio State. Joe, are you on Michigan this week as well?
I'm on Michigan, weirdly enough, Coyle, for the fact that no one's on Ohio State. And I know normally, we kind of always use the I'm forgetting the term for it, but when people, are all on a big upset in March Madness, and that they almost never, yes. I almost feel like no one's on Ohio State for a good reason. I think Michigan, although they haven't had the schedule, margin of victory has to come into effect at some point. Michigan has dominated. I know they struggled against Maryland, but that was a game you could have called from the beginning of the season that was going to be kind of a trap spot, going to Maryland in between Penn State and Ohio State. I think Michigan has the better quarterback at the end of the day as well. I think McCarthy is better than, whatever game plan Ohio State's going to throw out there. I think McCarthy is going to be able to, limit the turnovers as he has all season. I mean, there is a reason why this guy, although he hasn't had the numbers, has been, considered in the Heisman conversation for a while. He's obviously fallen off, as these guys like Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, Penix have put up better numbers. There's a reason, he's a very experienced quarterback. This is, I think, year 2 as a full-time starter, but I remember him getting playing time when they beat Ohio State 2 years ago.
Yeah, this is his 3rd time playing in the game.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I know Kyle McCord, has had a pretty solid season. I wouldn't say great, but solid, for sure. I think McCarthy's just a little bit better. I think this is going to be more of a little throwback to like an old school Big Ten game. I like the under of 46.5. I'm going to take Michigan to cover. Probably will stay away from the spread, while watching the game. I think I will take the under for sure. I think it's going to be a very good game. The one thing, Coyle, this is going to be the ultimate test for you and I saying all year, college football, the one thing it does when it has big games, it delivers. And I really, really hope this is a huge game that delivers, just like last night when your Birds took down the Chiefs.
Yeah, a few quick notes, like historical things on this game. A lot of history in this matchup, as we know, probably the best rivalry in all of college football. But the last time that so this will be the 3rd consecutive year these two teams, Ohio State and Michigan, are meeting up undefeated in the top 5. The last time that happened was 1973, 1975. So we're currently in one of the greatest stretches in the rivalry's history. And then on another side, too, Michigan is looking for their third straight win in this rivalry for the first time since 1995 to 1997. So this has been a rivalry that Ohio State has actually been pretty dominant in since we were alive, Joe. But 1997 was the last time Michigan won the national championship, and that was the last time they beat Ohio State 3 years in a row. So pretty crazy in that regard. Is this the year that Michigan finally finds a way to break through and win that national championship? It's going to be close, and it really is going to come down to this game or not, whether they have that chance at the end of the day. But as I was saying at the beginning, I'm just surprised. I haven't seen the line move at all because I haven't seen one person on Ohio State. Like I thought it would maybe move a little bit more to like 4.5. I did see it at 4 a little bit, but like 4.5, maybe up to 5. I just haven't seen a single person or heard a single person take Ohio State the entire week. But the last two matchups, it's hard to pick against Ohio State, or excuse me, against Michigan with what they've done to Ohio State. In the last two matchups, they've dominated, winning 42-27 and 45-23, punished Ohio State at the line of scrimmage, ran all over them in the second half. But Ohio State has really taken that to heart over these past 2 years, and I think really remade the program. When we thought of them the past few years, Joe, with Justin Fields, C.J. Stroud, all those NFL receivers, this was a team that just wants to spread it out and throw it around the yard. It's been a much more physical team this year, one with a lot of beef up front throughout the entire season. And for that regard, I think I've seen a lot of people on the under as well. I haven't seen one person or heard one person be on the over in this game. So much of the public, I feel like, is on Michigan spread, on the over-under. The last time this matchup went under 46.5 was all the way back in 2010 when Ohio State won 37-7. So you look at these two teams, they're both teams historically that put up points when they play each other. I know they've been in unders in the Penn State game, that both of their biggest games of the year so far. Both of those games went way under. But I just feel like you have to look at kind of the history in this game between these two matchups, these two teams. I know they're two teams that are completely different from the past, but you have to also consider, I think it is a major factor. I know it's probably the biggest story in college football right now, but Michigan is without their coach. And in the biggest game of the season, I feel like there's going to be a time and place where they wish they had Jim Harbaugh on the sideline in that one. There's just too many people, too much noise on Michigan. I'm going to go against the grain here. I'm going to take Ohio State, and I'm going to take the Buckeyes outright here. I think they have the best player in the game in Marvin Harrison. I think he's going to come up clutch on a few third downs. Kyle McCord, say what you want about him. I don't think he's lived up to the hype, the expectations of being that Ohio State quarterback, but he's found a way to win every single game he's played this year, 11-0, and big-time wins against Penn State and Notre Dame. He showed up when it mattered most. He's played in these big games before this year, and this is just a spot where I think Vegas is going to be laughing at everyone at the end of the day, and I think Ohio State's going to go to Michigan. Like I said, they haven't won 3 games in a row against Ohio State since 1995, 1997. Ohio State in this rivalry has found a way to get it done more times than not. I think that they find the way to get it done one more time here. They go to Ann Arbor and win 28-24. So give me Ohio State plus a 3.5 and the over a 46.5 hit in here. With all those numbers going over 46.5 in the past 13 matchups, that's pretty insane. So I'm going to side on that trend as well. But give me the Buckeyes pulling off what I would consider a pretty big upset, even though they're number 2 and Michigan's number 3. With all of these people in the world seemingly on Michigan, I think it would be pretty shocking to some people if Ohio State found a way to get done. All right, we're going to go backtrack a little bit. That was Saturday, obviously the big game. Want to get to that first. We go to Friday now, though. The American Athletic Conference, our Group of 5 game of the week. It should be an awesome one, Joe. I think outside of the Ohio State-Michigan game, this is probably the most even matchup and the game that I think could wind up being the best on the calendar this weekend. You have UTSA at 8-3, 7-0 in the conference, at number 23 Tulane, who's 10-1, 7-0 in the conference. 3:30 kick on ABC. Tulane is a 3-point favorite, over under 51.5. The winner of this game goes to the conference title game, most likely to play SMU, as SMU is playing Navy. But with 3 teams undefeated in the conference, you're going to have one of these teams coming away with a loss. So everything's on the line in this matchup, Joe. Can UTSA get it done at Tulane, or will the Green Wave be able to pull it off?
I think the Green Wave are going to be able to pull it off. I believe they're going to win this game. I have the final score being 29-21, a little bit of a weird score. Love the under in this game, 51.5, which is weird that I already have 2 unders. I feel like that's not normally my style. Not that I'm good at picking totals anyways. but I'm going to take Tulane to cover the spread as well. Really like this Tulane team. If they, didn't have their QB out earlier in the year, I think they would have beat Ole Miss. That was a game even with the backup in at halftime. They were up 17-10. Excuse me. That's the second time I've been a fat slob tonight. I apologize. But Tulane is a very good football team. I believe they're going to go back to a New Year's Six bowl again. I saw a lot of the projections. People have them playing against Texas, which I don't know why they're projecting Texas to not get into the playoff. I feel like it's a little bit rash, especially with how things are going to, could potentially play out. But I really love this Tulane team. I've talked about that. I think this is their fourth or fifth time on the show this year. Because I remember we had them on, week one, and then we had them on for Ole Miss for the Ole Miss game. I think we had them on at least one other time. I really like the Green Wave here, being at home. You're gonna have the home crowd on Black Friday. The locals from New Orleans going down to the game. Students probably won't be on campus, which does kind of hurt your home field advantage a little bit. But I really like this Tulane team. I really like Willie Fritz. I think he's going to be going. If I had to predict, Mississippi State has an opening. I wouldn't be shocked if you see him there next year.
Yeah.
Or at least taking the next step up. Like if a couple ACC jobs come open, I would not be shocked if you see him at a Power 5 job next year. Really love what he's done with this program. Tulane, for basically our entire lives, Coyle, was a laughing stock.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is back-to-back years. They've been a consistent top 25 team and could be playing in, New Year's Six bowl games back-to-back years.
Yeah, as I touched on at the beginning, Joe, I think this might actually wind up being the most entertaining game of the weekend. And it's at a perfect time slot too on Friday. So you're saying your Jets and Dolphins playing right there, but this is a great game to have. I get things side by side, and will probably be a more entertaining game than watching Tim Boyle play football. But perfect time slot, going to have a lot of eyes on it, and I'm glad because this is going to be a game that deserves the attention. Frank Harris has been playing awesome for UTSA since his return from injury earlier in the year. He had over 500 total yards last week against USF and 6 total touchdowns. He's a very fun player to watch and is in his 7th season of college football. So get some eyes on him for one last time, potentially this Friday. Michael Pratt, as you touched on, Joe, a very good quarterback as well. So we're going to see 2 good quarterbacks dueling it out here. And then with SMU being undefeated, most likely being beaten Navy, the loser of this game will not be going to the title game. So you get undefeated SMU in the conference title game, most likely versus the undefeated winner of this matchup. So everything's on the line in this one. It's going to be physical. It's going to come right down to the wire. I think both teams really playing for their lives. I expect an awesome game, a shootout, but I just think Frank Harris is the better quarterback at the end of the day. I think he's one of the more underrated guys in all of college football, and I think he's going to go out on top with a bang in this one. So I'm going to go UTSA pulling this one off on the road, 31-28. So UTSA +3 and over a 51.5 hit in there. All right, we go to our second game on Friday now. We have number 16 Oregon State at 8-3, 5-3 in the conference, coming off that home loss to Washington. At number 6, Oregon, 10-1, 7-1 in the conference, 8:30 on Fox. Oregon is a 13.5-point favorite. Over under is 62.5.
Yeah, I'm just going to spoil it again. This is my third under I like this week. I'm going under 62.5 to start. I have Oregon winning this game 31-20. I believe the Ducks get it done in prime time. I think this is going to be a very close game at the half. I think one of my best bets of the week, and Coyle, if I'm stealing it from you, I'm looking, I don't think I am. Oregon State first half spread. I love. I think it's going to be a very tight game at the half. I think this is the game that Bo Nix is going to, in my opinion, lock up the Heisman. And I know that sounds crazy because, they have to play Washington next week. But I think he's going to have a very good game. Bo Nix, I don't think he's going to turn the ball over, which, if you don't turn the ball over, you're going to win a lot of football games. Love DJ. Love, what he does with Oregon State. I've been saying that all year about them as well. But the Beavs, it's just they've kind of showed that they're a good team. But when they play the kind of the top-tier talented teams on their schedule, they just don't have the weapons. They don't have the firepower to get it done. We saw them play Wazoo, a high-powered offensive team on the road. I know Wazoo hasn't had the best season, but, you go on the road to a high-powered offense, they lose that game. They lost to Washington, a game where I thought they should have won personally. Looking back, watching that game, Oregon State looked really good, but lose that game. Now you have to go to Oregon, and I know this is their biggest rivalry game, the last Civil War ever. The fans are going to get up, the players are going to try to get up, but it's tough to get up when you have your third loss of the year going on the road. I think Oregon is going to pull away late. I think you see Bo Nix lead a drive to give them like a 24-20 lead in the fourth, and then Oregon State has a costly turnover deep in their own territory, and Bo Nix rushes one in to ice the game. Little mini Heisman moment. But I do love Beavers plus 13.5. I think that's a very big number. I think that will stay within the number, and I love the under. I think 62.5 is way too many points for a game with Oregon State.
Yeah, I was surprised to see the number this big too, Joe. And it could be one of those things where everyone's saying that, everyone winds up taking Oregon State spread, and then Vegas goes and cashes all those tickets when Oregon wins big. But I just think the way that both these teams play, it's going to be a game that's kind of hard to make much separation between the two, because I think at the end of the day, both these teams are physical enough where they're going to keep it at a close type of game. And I think outside of the Ohio State-Michigan game, this is a game where we'll see the most hatred, a lot of, after the play penalties, some roughing the passers, potentially some dirty hits, with Oregon leaving the conference. And correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I don't think I've seen an agreement or anything in place that these two teams are going to continue the rivalry after this, right?
All I've seen on social media is that they're in talks. Washington and Washington State,
I saw that.
next day you have an agreement. It says they're in talks, but nothing's concrete. But they're doing better than Oklahoma State. If you bring up that rivalry to either one of them, they're like, no, we're never playing them again.
Yeah.
But at least, Oregon State, I've saw they've been in talks, but nothing confirmed yet.
Yeah, so the last potential game, at least for the foreseeable future in this rivalry, it's a great chance for Oregon State to really just piss on Oregon's Pac-12 grave and leave them kind of hanging as that last potential team to go to the college football playoff out of the Pac-12. Oregon State has a chance to end that against their biggest rival. So I think it's going to be, no matter what, Oregon State is going to give it their best shot in this game. Oregon has won their last 7, though, in Eugene against the Beavers. And I think it's not that bold, but I do believe Oregon can beat any team in the country and could win the whole thing if they find a way into the playoff. I love the under in this one. Oregon's balance and physicality with their ability to run the ball with Bucky Irving and those guys. I think that ability to just kind of control the clock and Oregon State's preferred style of playing that smash mouth type game, it gives me a reason to believe that possessions are going to be at a minimum in this game. So I think Oregon State's going to keep it close and has a chance to win it at the end. DJ is going to have the ball, but I think he's going to come up short, and the Oregon defense gets a stop. So I'm going to go Oregon 24, Oregon State 21, Oregon State plus 13.5 in the under of 62.5 there. All right, back to Saturday now. We already touched on Ohio State, Michigan, obviously. Now we go to the Iron Bowl with number 8 Alabama at 10-1. 7-0 in the SEC, going to the SEC title game at Auburn, coming off a home loss to New Mexico State last week. 6-5 Auburn, 3-4 in the conference, 3:30 on CBS. Bama is a 14.5 point favorite with the over/under at 48.5.
New Mexico State, the most frustrating team in the country, Coyle. I text about it all the time. They go out and beat Auburn, but then they lose. They have losses to Hawaii and UMass on their record. But 9-3, shout out Jerry Kill and the Aggies. Great year for them. They get a chance to play top 25 Liberty in the Conference USA title game. But back to this game, Bama, and I know it's at Auburn, and I know, every time it's at Auburn, it seems like weird stuff happens. I think Bama's going to smash Auburn. I think that's a loss, even though New Mexico State is a 9-win football team. You don't come back from that loss. That's a loss like you're going to class on Monday. People on campus are definitely giving you a side eye, definitely being like, wow, you guys stink. Really tough to rally the troops. And I know it's Iron Bowl week, and I know you got to get up for it. But typically you start by getting up by smashing New Mexico State. You don't get – they got blown out. It wasn't close. I remember, Coyle, we were at the bar, and the game was on one of the TVs. I did a double take. There's no way that's the real score. New Mexico State smoked them. And that's really my analysis on the game. I'm not really going to go deep in depth. Jalen Milroe, better quarterback. Nick Saban, better head coach. And at the end of the day, when you have the better quarterback and the better head coach, you're typically going to win. Love Bama minus 14.5. And I love the over in this game because I think Bama's going to put up 42 on their own. And I think I can get at least 10 points out of Auburn. So I really like the over in this game.
Yeah, when we were talking about Ohio State, Michigan maybe being probably the biggest, the best rivalry in all college football, I think Alabama Auburn is my favorite rivalry in college football. Obviously, when it's a good matchup, and kind of looking at the history, back in 2017, number 6 Auburn beat number 1 Alabama. That's the last time that they've had like a big game. There's been a couple times where they were ranked, but like Auburn was like 24, Alabama was up there in like the top 5. I miss when this rivalry was like it was in the kick six. Like the kick six is my favorite college football memory. That's one of those like you remember exactly where you were when it happened, who you were with. That is just one of those plays that will always stick with me the rest of my life. And that number 1 Alabama, number 4 Auburn, like that was just such a great game. I feel like we just haven't been getting those recently. As I said, the 2017 number 6 Auburn, number 1 Alabama. We haven't had both these teams in the top 5 playing against each other since the kick six, and I believe that was in 2012 or 2013.
Wasn't that 2019 game pretty good though? I remember that was like it was the year before Mac Jones really went off.
I think there was a 4 overtime game a couple years ago, but like they're like
Yeah.
leading into it, I'm saying like the hype surrounding the matchup. We haven't had that in this rivalry in a while.
That's fair. I just remember, sorry to cut you off, Coyle, that 2019 game was that weird game where Mac Jones threw it to Najee and it like bounced off his back because Najee didn't turn. And I remember Auburn returned it like it was like a 102-yard pick six. I remember that game was stupid. Auburn ended up winning that game big.
Yeah,
And
Auburn's on some of the sides of the craziest plays in college football.
yeah, no, they especially it's always seems to be this rivalry. Then obviously, you had the 2013. It was the miracle at Jordan Hare too against Georgia, the tip pass. But it does seem like Auburn always finds a way to get it done. It's crazy.
Yeah, but I'm hoping they're able to get this rivalry back rolling again. I do think Hugh Freeze. I mean, if you just beat New Mexico State, you're heading into this matchup 7-4. I think most Auburn fans out of year one with no quarterback would have taken a 7-5 year. But I hope for college football's sake they're able to get this rivalry rolling back again. But Bama, when I speaking about rolling, is rolling right now. Anything in their path, it seems like they're demolishing. And with Auburn coming off that loss, I think they're not going to be as up for this game as normal. It's kind of hard to come back from one of those things. We know rivalry games can always get weird, but I expect Bama to be dominating this one so much like you that most of their main guys are pulled by the end of the third quarter. Don't give them room for much. Don't give those guys room for injury. Don't give some extra stuff out on tape that Georgia could potentially use against them last week. Make sure all your main guys, Jalen Milroe, the receivers, the key guys on defense, make sure those guys are just healthy heading into that Georgia game because I think that is going to be one game for the books for sure. So I'm a little bit worried about Alabama or the full game overhitting just because I think Alabama's going to be winning by so much. They might eventually take the foot off the gas just to save some guys. But I am looking at Bama's team total. I expect it to be around 33.5. I think they could put up 35 points easily in this game. So I am looking at that. I think they put up 35 with ease and dominate this game. I'm going to go Alabama 38, Auburn 17. So Bama minus 14.5. And I will take the over of 40.5. But my official play on it will probably be the Alabama team total. All right, we go to the Apple Cup now with Washington State at 5-6, 2-6 in the Pac-12. At number 4, Washington, 11-0, 8-0 in the Pac-12. 4 o'clock kickoff on Fox. Washington, a 16.5 point favorite, over under 68.5. Weird with this game being at 4. I feel like this is usually a night game, and it's like a cool kind of aesthetic with these two teams playing, but here they are playing at 4, and it is good to see that with Washington leaving for the Big Ten, these two teams will continue to play because it is one of the more historic, I guess, kind of rivalries in college football.
Yeah, Coyle, I agree. In my head, whenever I think of rivalry week, it's always this is the Friday night game, and then it's you get the Michigan, the Iron Bowl, and then you get Bedlam at night to end it. In my opinion, like that's when I think of rivalry week, like all the time slots and stuff. But I'm going Washington in this game 47-35. The one thing about the Apple Cup, even in blowout games, it always gets weird. Like I remember, speaking of the blowouts, I think it was Like Washington State had a legit shot at the playoff. I think they were like 10-1, and Washington was like, like in the lower top 25, and they just smashed them. That was one of the Mike Leach years where the air raid was really clicking, but lost that game big. You have a bunch of weird high scoring games in this rivalry. At least that's what it seems like to me. So I'm taking the over in this game. I think it's gonna be a very high scoring game. I think Penix is gonna put up the video game numbers. Cam Ward, I think, is gonna have a very good game as well. Not a lot of analysis. Both of these defenses aren't great. Washington's defense very up and down. Like the over, like Wazoo plus 16.5. A lot of points for me in a rivalry game.
Yeah, this is another rivalry that I thought was closer. Like when we were talking about Oklahoma State, I typically think like close, chaotic games could go either way. This is one that Washington's been running as well. I believe like the all-time record is like 75-32. I do know though that Washington has won 8 out of the last 10 in this matchup. Shout out to them though, Washington, for winning that game at Oregon State. In those elements, with the way they play, wanting to go out there and throw the ball 50 times a game, putting up 45 points, for them to go find a way to win in not ideal elements against a pretty strong Oregon State team. That's the mark of a great team. And I think going forward, if they are able to make the playoffs, that's one of those wins where they'll have confidence whether they're playing a Georgia, Ohio State, a Michigan, and Alabama. Throw whatever you want at us because we can play any type of way with Michael Penix. And I hope they win this game and head into that Oregon matchup undefeated with that chance to make the playoff with an unblemished record, because I think one of the more underrated stories in college football is Michael Penix coming from Indiana, suffering 2 major ACL injuries to his knees, and really just transforming his career at Washington, who has always been a pretty solid program during our lifetime, but he's made them into a national title contender. And I just think it's one of the more underrated storylines in all of college football. So I'm kind of rooting for Washington in that regard, but it's another chance for Washington State to kind of ruin Washington for leaving the Pac-12. They can get some revenge on them headed out the door. I just don't think that they're good enough to win the game outright, but I do think that this is going to be a high-scoring affair. I like Washington 43-26, so Washington State plus 16.5 in the over 68.5. Michael Penix, Cam Ward, I think those two guys are going to be going back and forth. We see a really competitive first half, but Washington kind of pulls away there in the end. All right, our 6th and final game of the week, our final breakdown for the regular season, Joseph. How did we get here already? 2 days before Thanksgiving. Pretty wild, but number 5, Florida State at 11-0 at Florida, 5-6, 7 o'clock kickoff on ESPN. FSU minus 6.5, over under 50.5. And didn't really touch on this at the beginning, though, but a lot of these rivalries are not exactly living up to the matchup. We have a 6-5 Auburn, a 5-6 Washington State, a 5-6 Florida, but a couple teams there playing for desperation and potentially go to the bowl game. Do you think Florida has a chance to knock off Florida State, Joe?
If Graham Mertz was playing, I would say yes. But this is going to be the backup bowl. We have Max Brown for Florida, who went 4 for 5 in the Missouri game. Because I was curious, because I was kind of watching, not watching really closely to that game against Missouri. And, we have Jordan Travis going down. I don't even know who the backup was for Florida State. I'm looking right now. We had two. We have Tade Rodemaker. Seems like he's going to be the guy going for the Noles this weekend. Saturday
Boyle's cousin.
Who's?
Tim Boyle's cousin.
Oh, don't get me started. By the way, this full circle moment, you and I making fun of Tim Boyle freshman year of college. Now he's starting for the Jets in a standalone game. Just brutal. I'm so oh my god. But
1 touchdown to the 13 interceptions in his college career.
Yeah, UConn. He had to transfer out of UConn football. Yeah, when Xavier High School, coming out of Middletown, Connecticut, has 2 of the 32 starting NFL quarterbacks leading into the week, that's just I don't know. That's not good. But anyways, back to this game. I think Florida State's going to win this close. I have the score being 31-28, so I have the under. I really like the under with 2 backup QBs, even though I will say, when I'm thinking under, I wasn't thinking 31-28 would hit it. I think this game's going to be kind of ugly. Not really liking my score prediction here, but I'm going to take the Gators plus 6.5, especially being at home and fighting for bowl eligibility. You have Billy Napier coaching for his – what are you laughing at over there?
31-28 is not the under. That's
31-28 is slams the over. I'm way off. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I'm like, wait, I'm looking at the score. I'm like, no, I definitely have under 50.5. Whatever. Long day today. I'm taking the under. Forget my score. I like the under in this game. Um, oh man. Yeah, no, that equals 59. I'm like in my head, I get 49. Good. That's just what shows how much I care about this game, if we're being quite honest. Two backups. I think Florida State's going to win a close one, especially this game. Billy Napier coaching for his career, in my opinion. I think if they lose this game, he's out, not making a bowl game. Florida fans expect national titles, which I always say is kind of crazy because they've only won 3 national titles in their history. I'm all for, wanting your team to be good, but you also kind of got to have realistic expectations. Year 2 under Napier, I will say not making a bowl game would be very bad. If you make a bowl game, who knows what happens. But I can't believe I thought that was the under. Give me Florida State. Let me just stop talking about this game.
Yeah, Florida is desperate, Joe. The last time the Gators, I had to dig through the history books for this one. The last time, though, the Florida Gators failed to win 7 or more games in 3 straight seasons was back in the late 1970s. And with a loss against FSU, they will not be able to reach 7 wins, obviously, because they will not be going to a bowl game. So that'll mark the 3rd straight year with fewer than 7 wins. And the Gators might officially be at rock bottom from what we saw during the Urban Meyer kind of era. And ever since then, it's been downhill for Florida. Billy Napier might be gone, as you were saying, after this. Do we see a motivated Gator team? Is this one of those things where they want to go out there, they want to play for Billy Napier? They have a chance to also go and knock off Florida State and potentially ruin their chances at going to the playoffs as well. What does Florida State look like without Jordan Travis? As we touched about at the beginning, I think they kind of have to go out there and win this game convincingly, and then they have to do it against Louisville as well to show Jordan Travis was not the only reason why this team was here. We still have a bunch of dudes, and we're deserving of going to the playoffs with an undefeated season and a conference championship as well. So with what you were saying kind of about this being a backup game, there's still a lot of storylines and intrigue, I think, around it. I think Florida State is going to be playing more motivated forever. They want to get this done for Jordan Travis. And do the Gators want to go out there and play for Coach Napier? Because if not, he could be on the outside looking in as well when it comes to coaching at the University of Florida next year. So I think Florida is going to put up a good fight. They're playing for that bowl eligibility. But I do think the Seminoles find a way to win it at the end of the day. I also like the under, and my math was correct. I have Florida State 27, Florida 23. So Florida plus the 6.5, covering that spread, and the under of 50.5 hitting there. All right, last 2 segments of the show, the lock of the week. Joe, you hit last week with LSU minus 30.5. Do you want to give us your final regular season lock of the week for the 2023 college football season?
Yeah, before my lock of the week, Coyle just got the tweet, Oregon wearing special uniforms to honor Spencer Webb. I'm going to officially flip my pick to Oregon to cover the spread. I feel like that makes a difference. They're playing for Spencer Webb, who passed away in 2022. His son, he found out after he passed away, his girlfriend, they found out his girlfriend was pregnant with his son. So his son is now born. They're honoring Spencer Webb at the game tonight or this weekend. Flipping my pick, uniform bet, blind bet, have to take that. My lock of the week is Georgia Tech plus 24.5, minus 115 at home against Georgia. Simply because I don't think Georgia considers this game a rivalry. I'm going to be quite honest. I don't think Kirby Smart is sitting there telling these guys to get up for this game. Their season is all about next week. They've come off a couple big games against top 25 opponents. Now you have to go on the road to Atlanta, where the crowd's probably going to be at least 70% Georgia fans. I don't see the Tech contingent really showing out. This rivalry is called clean old-fashioned hate. Great rivalry name, but just not a good rivalry. I think Georgia Tech's going to cover the spread, though. 24.5 is a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if, Kirby, for lack of a better word, calls off the dogs. Don't get hurt in this game.
Kind of like I was saying Alabama.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if, Georgia – I could see a lot of people taking, oh, my God, minus 24.5, Georgia Tech stinks. And then, Georgia Tech ends up even having a backdoor cover and they lose by 24. Really like that you're getting the hook there. If it was 23.5, I might be a little different about it. I know, as crazy as that sounds, but give me the Yellow Jackets to cover the spread.
All right, and then our dog of the day, our underdog money line pick. I'm going to the SEC for mine. Arkansas is a 7-point home dog, plus 235 on the money line. They're playing number 9 Mizzou. It's an Arkansas team that did not have great expectations, I think, heading into the year, but I think they were expected to be like a 7-5, 8-14. This isn't a team going bowling. This is a team that just announced that Sam Pittman, the head coach, is coming back. If that fires up the guys that really like him, I think he's a player's coach and they enjoy playing for him. It's senior day at home for KJ Jefferson, one of the best quarterbacks in Arkansas history. It just looks like one of those spots, a Mizzou team that has looked really good actually over the season. I give them credit as one of the more surprising teams in a good way in college football this season. But I just think this is a low number. They should be a double-digit favorite in this one. It might be one of those Vegas nose type spot. I think KJ Jefferson goes out with the bang and leaves his mark. If I'm able to find my way over to Jersey at some point before this game and bet on some player props, I might look to do that for Mr. KJ Jefferson. But I think that they have a legit shot to win this game, +7 at home against Mizzou, +235 on the money line. That is my official dog of the day pick for our regular season finale.
Yeah, Coyle, Arkansas, one of those weird teams. They're 4-7, but they have a touchdown loss to Ole Miss, a 3-point loss to Bama, and then a 7-3 loss to Mississippi State. Those games go differently. Who knows what happens the rest of the way in the regular season. But for my dog of the day, I take us up to Maction. I'm going Central Michigan. They're +300 on the money line, +10.5 comes in at -115. They are at home versus Toledo. Toledo number 23 in the AP poll. They are 10-1. Another one of those group of 5 teams that, if things break the right way for them, we could be seeing the Rockets if they were to win out. Be in a New Year's 6 bowl game. However, I think Maction is going to come through here the last weekend of the regular season. We had Toledo almost lose a couple weeks ago. It might have even been last week. I don't know off the top of my head. I haven't really been laser focused on Toledo Rocket football. I won't lie. But give me the Chippewas, my last regular season dog of the day, where I don't think I've hit a dog of the day this whole season.
All right. Well, there's no better way to end it than that. Season came and went in a flash, but next weekend is going to be spectacular. The Big 12, who the hell knows what that title game is going to wind up looking like? I think still like 50 different scenarios for teams to potentially make it, but SEC title game is going to be a war. I think the ACC title game, even without Jordan Travis, I think that's going to be a really fun matchup. If we get Washington, Oregon again, that was probably one of the best, probably maybe the best college football game so far this season. Who else am I missing? The Big Ten, that's probably going to be a snooze fest, but we got some great games coming up next week, and we'll be covering them all 5 or all 10 conference championships. We'll be breaking them down here at Beef Up Front next week. So a locked and loaded episode coming ahead. Probably my favorite episode of the entire season, Joe. But any last second comments before we head out? And Tim Boyle time is almost upon us.
Yeah, I might have to get a Tim Boyle jersey at this point. I'll get a Tim Boyle tattoo if he leads us to the playoffs. I'll say that right now while we're recording. That's how confident I am. The Jets might not win another game this year. But what else is new? Coyle, like you said, it's crazy. Here we are, end of the regular season. But next week's show, I would have to agree with you, is one of the best shows of the year. Mm-hmm. We break down 10 games, and all 10 games that mean everything. That, and then, obviously, when we do our playoff show. But, I say it every week, enjoy it. This is going to be the game, especially if you have to do stuff on Saturday. Make sure you leave your noon to about 4 p.m. open so you can watch Ohio State, Michigan. Mm-hmm. Watch that game. Then, the rest of the day. And I'm always a big college football guy. But if you're going to get some brownie points with the girlfriend or, you want to hang out with your friends, go do it Saturday evening rather than early on so you can watch Ohio State, Michigan. You can catch the first half of the Iron Bowl when it'll probably be close. Enjoy it, though. It's last weekend of college football where it's going to be wall-to-wall. After this, we're going to be really settling in, getting dark at 4 o'clock watching college basketball.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, and enjoy your Thanksgiving.